Walking a Rainbow, Chapter 2, Ingatestone to Saint-Jean. So it was that one July evening, tired after the hassle of packing, we went down to the Community Club bar in Ingatestone, Essex, on the eve of our trip. I stared into my beer, trying to read the future in the settling froth. "I see a passionate Spanish senorita," I said hopefully, "with jet black hair and flashing eyes. What do you see in yours, Kes?" "I see black currant and lemonade and 2 bits of ice," he replied factually. No. I waved my hands over my glass expressively, doing my gypsy clairvoyant impression. "It's getting clearer now. Good God, I think it's 2 senoritas. Now come on, Kes, you see how to do it. Try harder, concentrate." He gazed seriously into his drink. "I see black currant and lemonade and 2 smaller bits of ice," he said. "You have no soul, Kes." "Soul? Sex is just the visible manifestation of an amalgamation of souls, Kes." "Oh yeah." "Or maybe the other way round." He looked puzzled and then grinned. After 2 long walks together, we had got closer. I had discovered his strengths. He had found some of my weaknesses. We were easy in each other's company. On the great day of departure, we were up early, posed for posterity by our privet while our photo was taken, and set off to hitch to southern France. In a couple of hours we were at the coast, sharing the pride of Dover with 4 ton of assorted youth and a lot of Japanese with brown corduroy baseball caps with Yamaha printed on them. The Japanese were plainly bound together as a group. There was much shared concern when a younger employee leaned too far over the rail. It looked like a large family outing rather than a company. They had a group loyalty and regard which contrasted markedly with the spiky individualism of the English school parties ranging round the ship like fluid packs of hyenas. Kes had never been abroad before. I'd given him long lectures on walking in Spain in August and its difficulties. The heat will be our biggest problem, I expect. The sun will be our enemy. About halfway across the channel I found Kes in the stern of the boat, gazing wistfully at the broad, dead-straight, sun-speckled wake behind us. "Can't feel it getting hotter, Dad," he said distrustfully. "Have faith, Kes," I replied. At Boulogne I decided to teach Kes a little patience, and while everyone else competitively clattered and battered their way off the quay and through a narrow gate into the wide world, I took a break and smoked a cigarette, cool and superior, sitting on a bollard. The bollard, I soon discovered, was covered with a rich, glutinous, oil-like chewing gum, which stuck to my trousers like the residue of some embarrassing lapse, and stayed there for weeks afterwards. Feeling nervous, we walked through the town and alongside a stinking river southwards. "Hitching is an art form, Kes." "Oh yeah." "Yes indeed. We must find a suitable spot. Success in hitching, like interior decorating and sex, is all in the preparation." "Right, Dad." But there wasn't a good spot until we had walked right out of town, and then we waited for hours. "Art form, eh? I'm a little rusty, give me time." "I dread to think what your decorating is like," said Kes archly. Eventually we got a lift in an ancient lorry. The driver was ancient too, and unshaven. He had a lump the size of an orange on his elbow and wheezed a lot. The lorry was equally decrepit. He had to hold the gear stick in position while he drove, and had to pull the choke, yes it had one, to get the thing up the slightest hill. Still, we arrived at Montreux, about 20 miles from the coast, where the Citadel was a youth hostel. Kez insisted on dragging me round the ramparts to see the view. It was peacefully rural, except for a group of scouts in bright red scarves rolling full length on the ground down the slope towards the river. Mosquitoes zipped about. Kez rushed off to the dungeons or something, and he soon appeared far below me. I waved. "I think I can see a gold crest," I shouted down. "There's 2 beetles mating down here," he yelled back. "Naturally, this is France, Kez," I explained. "Everything does it all the time here." In the evening, I wrote up my diary, as I did most nights. I kept a notebook handy in a breast pocket during the day, and jotted down anything which grabbed my attention: thoughts and feelings, facts and remarks, outlines of conversation, quotes. In the night I was plagued by mosquitoes, and acquired a 3D map of our route on my back. "OK, if we get lost, Dad," said Kez consolingly the next morning, "we can just whip up your shirt and ask someone to point out exactly where we are." "Yes, but I couldn't see where they pointed, and your geography stops at Thurrock." After a long wait hitching, a young girl stopped, and we climbed into a car filled with dirty washing. She dropped us at Saint-Maxent, one of those French villages with a perfectly straight road coming from the horizon going into it, and a mirror image going to the horizon coming out of it. "We're going to be here a long time, Kez." Cars whipped through the place as if it were the Strait at Indianapolis. So we hitched and sucked mints and repacked the bags and threw stones at a post for 3 hours, until finally getting a lift to Rouen. Only 80 miles, but it had taken all day. In the evening we went for a walk down the cobbled road by the river and watched the huge flat industrial barges and the screaming swifts swooping over the town in the evening light. As we unwound in the twilight, a huge barge, like a small oil tanker, quietly turned mid-river and slowly drifted towards us. The mind took on the pace of the movement. The boat inched in, heavy and easy. I felt calm and unburdened. There was a couple and a dog on board. The man handled the 5-foot wheel with a casual ease, wafting the massive boat up to a huddle of moored vessels just close enough for his wife to throw a rope over a bollard, but without the hull touching the quay. I sat and enjoyed the quiet grace. The great secret of the novelist, well, some of them anyway, is that the world works like a novel. It has plot and structure, symbols and metaphors. It is organised according to meaning. By the river I could have found myself concerned with any of a myriad of other features which were available: the lights of the town, the night sky, the water's flow. I could have found myself indifferent to the scene and turning to Kez in need of speech or contact. But no, the ease of this birthing was a self-selected. that this man should turn his wheel of fortune and so delicately achieve a temporary homecoming. This embodied, summed up, and foretold my greatest need, and I knew it. The world provides such frequent and interconnected instances of a person's themes and symbols. Synchronicity, meaningful coincidence, is not a weird rarity, it is common and frequent. A symbol is a part of the puzzle, a piece which implies the whole. We get the word symbol from the ancient Greek symbolon. A symbolon was a single coin or token, a circle, a oneness complete in its wholeness. When friends or lovers parted, a symbolon might be broken in two. Each kept one part in witness of the whole that had been lost, and which might one day be retrieved. The jagged edge of the cleft symbolon, which would match another half somewhere else, was therefore a reminder of lost love and a broken heart, and of a promise of possible healing. Once unity is shattered, only once unity is shattered, does proper symbolism begin. And there's a special sort of feeling which goes with encountering this sort of symbol. Something happens which electrically grabs your attention, something apparently trivial, but maybe the back of your neck tingles. It is like a personal message saying something like, "This is really important to you. Pay attention to this." But note that it is symbolic and just a part of something bigger, which you'll have to find out about for yourself. The man and his boat was like that. This trip was riddled with such events. The next day we walked out of Rouen to find the route to Tours. "Can I hitch, Dad?" "No, Kes. It's a difficult art which takes many years to perfect. When I've taught you some more, perhaps you might try a little. The important thing is not to get discouraged." But we did, hitching another 2 hours. "Just let me try once," said Kes, waving his arm in demonstration. There was a screech of brakes and a sleek silver sports car driven by a beautiful brunette appeared. "Cheers, Kes," I gasped. She seemed flustered and had plainly stopped completely on impulse. I began to realise that Kes was a major asset. With his startlingly blonde hair and his sweet cherubic face, he seemed to catch the eye of women. She dropped us off at Tours. Tours is a big town, and we walked a long way to go through and get out of it. Women kept stopping and offering us lifts, even when we weren't hitching. So we were soon speeding on towards Angoulême as the warm weather turned to rain. And you know what happened at Angoulême. Beyond Angoulême, a slim young woman stopped in a Citroën and beamed at Kes with something approaching worship. We got in. There was a baby on the back seat. Kes got in beside it and the car roared off. "I just adore children," cooed the woman in French, staring in devotion at Kes over her shoulder and driving fast through thick traffic, apparently solely by intuition. She seemed to regard the whole thing as an honour to have temporary contact with the adorable Kes. She took us to the edge of town and on to the Bordeaux road. With her eyes brimful of a gushing and enveloping love, she reluctantly bade us adieu, just as a big British truck shuddered to a halt. He took us to Bordeaux. Bordeaux is an impressive looking city. Spires and bridges and a wide river. Down that spacious river was the rest of the world. It held promise of other countries. That's not the only promise it held. As we got out of the truck, a scrawny young woman leered at us. What's she doing, Dad? Advertising, I think, Kez. Anyway, I changed the subject swiftly. Not a bad day, maybe 360 miles. Let's find somewhere to stay. We walked through the back streets looking for the youth hostel. This part of town was decidedly seedy. Odours like decomposing lizards oozed from the drains. We passed a pornographic cinema. Tattoo parlours showed pictures of women with elaborate decorations in astonishing places. Kez was fascinated. I got the distinct impression that there were diseases to be caught in Bordeaux that science had yet to discover. Eventually we found the youth hostel, and it was very full. There were literally people hanging out of the windows. We went in and found the warden, a big, sullen chap with all the flesh on his face seeking the floor. "Full, full," he intoned. "No room here." "Is there anywhere else we can go?" I asked. "Nowhere. The whole of Bordeaux is full." "Surely there's somewhere." "Nowhere. Don't you know what day it is?" "No. The Tour de France arrives here tomorrow, all beds taken." "Well, we didn't know." "Are you members?" he asked, apparently to have a good reason to turn us away. "Well, yes, of course." He suddenly looked very guilty. "I will see what I can find," he said in a shifty manner. 40 minutes later he returned and told us he had found us 2 beds. I had a bed next to a cycling journalist. Kez had a bed next to a cycling journalist. The place was all pressmen. It became clear that the warden had filled the hostel with people who would pay over the odds and was making a few bob. The very idea of racing to a place, a competition, felt like a kind of insanity. You couldn't get much further from my conception of a pilgrimage than the Tour de France. A journey of pain to determine a victor. The strongest wins, all else are losers. Pilgrim and pilgrimage are odd words in English. Anyone who uses them positively is a bit suspect, as if they might, at any moment, ask you if Jesus has come into your life. The pilgrim is cranky and slightly worse than train spotters, bird watchers and stamp collectors. I blame Henry VIII. Pilgrimage is a universal phenomenon. Every part of the globe has its sacred places and its traditions of walking to them. In some religions, like Islam, it is central to the entire practice. Native Americans, Tibetans, Poles and Peruvians all have their holy journeys. Even England to Canterbury, and Walsingham to Glastonbury and Holy Island, and many more. Things got tricky with Henry VIII. When he broke with Rome, all things Catholic became not only banned but suspect, even treasonous. Pilgrimage was associated with the Catholic. Henry even sent spies into continental Europe to discover whether any English were taking part in foreign pilgrimages. No wonder the words fell into disrepute and became dubious. We left early the following day and got a bus out of town, and from there hitched easily through endless dreary forest to Bayonne. We wandered the streets in the old quarter, Tried to find somewhere cheap enough to stay. No youth hostel. At our third attempt we found a room in the Bar Basque, with its bullfighting posters and murals of Basque men in traditional red berets. It was a sordid little room at the top of a cliff-like house. Outside our window were willows below and swooping swifts. The plumbing played popular classics on kazoos, while I sorted out some bread and a tin of mackerel in white wine that my father had brought over for Christmas and nobody would eat. It had simmered in the rucksack and was warm. It stunk like runny cheese and tasted odd. We ate it anyway. In the morning the room reeked like some exotic brothel. We paid the bill and slunk away before they found out, leaving all the windows wide open. We crossed the wide, seven-arched bridge where people were fishing beneath flags of the nations and made for the station. In the booking hall I fiddled with our rucksacks nervously. "Shouldn't we get some tickets, Dad?" "Yeah, but I'm a bit anxious about my terrible French. And besides, I can't remember the French for ticket. You don't know the French for ticket by any chance? TK?" "I don't think that's right. Still, here goes." And I strode to the ticket office and faced the pretty, pert, Parisian-looking young lady behind the glass. "Bonjour." "Bonjour, monsieur." "Saint-Jean?" "Oui." "Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port?" "Oui." Then, thankfully, the gods came to my rescue and I recalled the French for ticket. "De bidet, s'il vous plaît." 17 different emotions appeared to contest for supremacy over the muscles of her face. "De bidet?" she said, beaming. "Oui," I replied, smiling back. I soon secured my tickets and returned to Kes in triumph. "No trouble at all," I said, waving the ticket. "Well, you seem to be a smash hit at the ticket office." I turned to see the young woman talking in an animated way to a friend and gesticulating in our direction. Both seemed in a very good mood. They saw us watching and waved. We waved back. "Women, Kes," I informed him, "are traditionally renowned for their intuition. She has probably some subtle awareness of my skills as a tea-bag hurler." "Tea-bag hurler," said Kes doubtfully. "Just so." We hefted our rucksacks and went to board the train. The short rail trip from Bayonne to Saint-Jean was a pleasure. Such a pretty line, with the foothills of the Pyrenees, coped with cloud, looming over all like a serious old age. I looked up at those dark, deep violet cones and thought somberly that tomorrow we will be up there, on foot at last, crossing those mountains. Landscape broods. In a vast mass like mountains, this is easy to feel and can be intimidating. They seemed to be waiting to be looked at properly. I gazed at them a while, felt their call. We got on the train. The carriage was packed with school kids with small rucksacks, and they flitted with excitement from one side of the compartment to the other, vying with each other to spot something and to share it with the others. The carriage filled with whoops and giggles and cries of wonder. The train curved around the town and over the wide river and plunged into a peculiar world which seemed to be a series of echoes of other countries. Austrian chalets, Mexican names for stations, farms like haciendas, patches of thorough French cultivation. There were stands of wild buddleia, deep cuttings filled with ferns, then a sudden tunnel which made the ears pop, and a station like somewhere desperate in Bolivia, where nothing had moved for at least a decade. The station names were like stopping places on the way to Xanadu, Jashu, Ishasu, Beharahata. I jotted down these unpronounceable places like a reporter. Amid a carpet of thick pile maize, like crowds of waving green children, lay a sleepy white farm with matte brown shutters and a dozing donkey by a well. The line began to follow a lively, fast-flowing river, crossing it sometimes and back again. We got glimpses, like snapshots, of riverbank, cliffs of tumbled rock, and water flowing strongly, sometimes with children standing on rocks ready to dive, who waved and shouted to our kids on board. We plunged into more tunnels and out suddenly like a gasp of air. Plane trees and oak and horse chestnut brushed close. In the harvested fields, piles of grass like gnomes' huts. Onward the train weaved around vast pyramids of wooded hills. There was the river again, the colour of cold green slate, till we arrived at the bare, quiet station of Saint-Jean.